Okay, so we'll get started. Thank you all for joining today's webinar, Develop, Test, Deploy Mobile Apps on Demand in the Cloud. I'm Alyssa Tong. So Mark, let me change the presenter to you so we can see your slides. Sorry about that.
That's great. Do I have to share?
Yes, please.
Okay, very good.
Okay, see your screen now?
Very good. Let me get my presentation up. What was it? I'm sorry, I had it right here. Then I lost it when I had to change the... Sorry, everyone, these are all my examples, which we'll have a look at in just a minute. Where was it? I'll just open it here. Okay. Okay, thanks so very much, everyone. Hello, my name's Mark Pritchard from CloudBees, and I'm joined by KD from Zubhium, and we'd like to give you a little talk and mostly demonstration about the whole way in which you can use the cloud to both develop, deploy, test, and get user feedback for your mobile apps, all done using on-demand cloud resources. So two companies here, but one solution. I'll show you how easy it is to do this and how closely integrated these things are. So just for those of you, I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about CloudBees as a whole. I just want to give you a little bit of a picture of the CloudBees Platform as a Service, or PaaS, just so you get the overview of what we're doing. So for us, Platform as a Service encompasses not just the runtime of deploying apps and running them and managing them in the cloud, but also it's the ability to develop and to manage the whole development life cycle for those applications in the cloud. So you'll be seeing quite a number of examples of where we're using the Jenkins. Jenkins is a very, probably the most widely used open source continuous integration platform. It was started by Kosuke Kawaguchi, who's now my colleague here at CloudBees. He started that back in his Sun days, and this is now adopted all over the world. There's a very active Jenkins community. There are over 600 plugins to access all variety of source code control, compilation tools, and so on. And in fact, as you'll see, our integration point with Zubhium is that we have a Zubhium plugin which we can plug into Jenkins. So what Jenkins will do is to manage the build and the deployment of the application, and then we'll use the Zubhium plugin to push that out to the Zubhium service running in the cloud, which will manage the distribution of that to the beta users out live in the field. And then we also have, as well as our rich partner ecosystem, we have the ability to deploy sort of server-side apps onto the CloudBees platform, so that, for example, where you have that classic pattern of mobile applications that then talk to a server either to update data or to get feeds and so on, all those things, those services can all be running in the cloud on CloudBees. So you don't need any infrastructure, you don't need data centers. You can build your mobile app, you can have this deployed through CloudBees and Zubhium out to the mobile platforms, and you can have the back-end services also deployed up to CloudBees. And as a developer, you can sign up for CloudBees completely free. There's no charge for this, and you can use our shared multi-tenant resources. So all the things we're going to show you today, you can actually try out and do for yourself. So that's just a very brief overview of the CloudBees platform and platform as a service. What I would perhaps like you to look at if you have time is I did a blog on this talking about how this fit between continuous integration delivered as a service in the cloud, the whole vision of platform as a service and mobile development goes so neatly together. And that will explain a little more about some of these ideas and how this fits into the overall picture with platform as a service. We also have a whole series of blogs, and the links here point to blog.cloudbees.com. So you have a whole series of blogs there which explain how to do mobile builds using Jenkins in the cloud so that you can use your local development tools. You can use your Eclipse with ADT for Android. You can also do iOS with Xcode, and then you can also push those up into the cloud. You can use either CloudBees hosted source code repositories, or you can use GitHub. You can use a variety of different repositories. If you use local repositories for development, again, you can integrate with those using Jenkins plugins. We also have online some examples of actually how to do this. So if you want to set up your own jobs, if you go to that URL I'm showing there, the partnerdemo.ci.cloudbees.com, and we'll have a look at that in a minute. If you have a look at the mobile folder, you will see a whole set of jobs that I've set up with examples of how to do what's in the blogs. And you'll also see the demo that we're going to run today. Just as another example of all of the interesting things that you can do with platform as a service and mobile application development, once again, I took an example from the Amazon SDK. So Amazon have their Android and iOS SDKs, and they have a very interesting concept called a token vending machine. Now, we don't go into it here, but very simply, the idea here is that if you want your mobile applications to be able to access Amazon resources, so things like S3 buckets, you want to access SQS queuing or notification services, any of the Amazon Web Services, obviously, as you know, you have to provide credentials to enable you to access those resources. Now, if your application wants to take advantage of those services, how do you enable people to do that without forcing them to sort of enter access keys and things like that? Well, the token vending machine is what provides the answer to that solution. It uses something called Amazon Secure Token Service, and basically you can have a server application running, and in my example, I show you how to set that up on CloudBees. It's extremely simple, and you can just run that up. You provide your Amazon credentials. You can set up a user with the appropriate restricted permissions, and what the token vending machine will do is enable mobile clients to connect to that server over REST and get a temporary time-limited token which enables them to access services using your credentials but in a very tightly controlled manner. So it's a very interesting example about how mobile developers are working with platform as a service and the underlying Amazon infrastructure as a service to do really interesting things. So if you have a look for that blog, you'll see in the slides we have all the links there, and we also have a set of ClickStarts. So if you sign up for cloudbees.com, I'll show you how to do that just at the end. Very simple, it's all in free, it only takes a few clicks, and once you're signed up, we actually have these things we call ClickStarts, and they basically are a complete project in a box, so that you click on it and we will automatically create for you a source code repository. We'll create a build job, that application. And so just to show you a little bit of what I'm talking about. So this, for example, is the partnerdemo.ci.cloudbees.com. So you can go to that. This is publicly accessible. You have a read-only access to that, and you will see a set of jobs around CuckooChess. I'm going to talk about those in a minute. But if you go, for example, to the mobile folder, you'll see there a whole series of examples that I've set up to show how you can do builds in the cloud, or indeed using a local slave machine. So you can have all the builds configured, stored, run from the cloud. But if you want to have those running so that you can have the build happening on your local machine, for example, if you have a tethered device that you want to use for, say, running tests and so on, you can do that as well. And in the blogs that I link to, we show examples of how to do that. And again, if you want more details, for example, this is doing an Android build in the cloud, you can simply click down and you can have a look at the configuration. I've got notes about all this in the blog, and you can see exactly how I've configured it. You see, in this case, I'm setting up to build from GitHub, and then we use a standard Android emulator plugin. The CloudBees Jenkins in the cloud service is automatically set up. It will be already set up with the Android SDK, platform tools, and so on. It will install the appropriate target for you, and then you can run the emulator while you're doing your build, and you can do a sort of standard Android build. This one actually uses the NDK as well, and you just do a standard Android build. You can specify which platform target you want to use, and it will then do the build. It will install the app on the emulator. It will run your unit tests. You can also set up things like Monkey Runner and so on to do all the testing you need to do, and that will automatically happen in the cloud every time you push a change to your source code. So please do have a look at the examples. Let me show you a few of the things. We show you examples using the Stockfish chess program. This is very powerful. This is the Droidfish example. Peter Ursuland put this together. You can find all the source code online, and the repository and so on are all linked to from those blogs that I showed as part of the webinar. And for example, we'll be working with a slightly simpler version called CuckooChess. I'll show you that in a minute. And then if I come back here, you'll see if you want to run, say, that token vending machine demo, that's what it's going to look like. So again, it's all fully laid out in the blogs, all the instructions, all the source code are there. So let's just go back. Now I've introduced CuckooChess. Let's go back to have a quick look at the at what we're going to do in the demo. Sorry, I'm not having any luck finding my slides today. There we go. So what we've done, Katie and I have put together a little demo which will enable you to actually try this out, and he'll explain exactly how that works in a minute. But I've decided to use this CuckooChess. Simply, it's a fully functioning chess game. It's quite good. It's not quite as powerful as Droidfish. For those of you who are familiar with my blogs, the reason we chose not to use Droidfish is just because the builds take quite a bit longer. The Droidfish also uses the NDK as the underlying chess engine. Is written in C, and so builds are much quicker with CuckooChess, and that's the reason why we've chosen to do it. So what we're going to show you is how we can set up a build in the cloud using Jenkins for our Android application. We can then have Jenkins automate that build. we're then going to set up a pipeline where we're going to do some subsequent tests. We're going to do some validation. I've set up a follow-on job which will automatically build versions of CuckooChess for multiple Android targets. Again, doing that in the cloud makes it incredibly easy. You can simply push your changes up and these things all happen in a row. Then when we approve the build, it will automatically be pushed up into the cloud to the Zubhium service, including support for Zubhium. The Zubhium SDK is extremely straightforward. I'll show you how that works, and KD will explain a little more about it. And once that's included, when we push that app out to our beta testing users, what happens is that provides the full support for user feedback, crash reporting, bug tracking, and so on. Whole load of things that we can do. And just before we started, I pushed up a build with a bug in deliberately, and we'll see how that works. And you'll actually, if you have an Android phone, KD set things up so that you can actually try this out yourself. So this is what I had to do in the code just to add support for the Zubhium SDK. So in the main activity, which in this application is CuckooChess, all I have to do is we just do the import statement for the Zubhium SDK, and then you'll see on the Zubhium console in a minute, we have an application key. So I just get that and I drop that here into the code. And then I just have to basically initialize the Zubhium SDK here with that app key. That's it. At that point, I'm done. I do have to make sure that we have the appropriate permissions in the Android manifest.xml. This one is required. This one is useful for much deeper levels of diagnostic. And again, KD can explain all the things that will happen there in just a minute. So when we see the application build, you'll see here I have a sort of a build pipeline. Just to explain it very quickly, we do the job which builds the actual Android application, and then I've set up a dependent job which is a matrix build. And again, all of this is explained in much more detail in the blogs that go with the webinar. And for example, I've set this up so that I want to have this build against a variety of older Android platforms, so that I check that we do have backward compatibility and that we will be able to support older devices and so on. A lot of people use these kind of matrix builds to to test with different form factors, different user locales, different languages, and so on. And again, the beauty is all happening in the cloud. The resources are just allocated on demand. You don't have to set up, a whole set of machines to do these builds. We'll just do it all for you, and when it's ready, you get the results. And then, as part of the pipeline, I've set up a little job where an approver, a QA person, in this case it will be me with a different user identity, I'll go in and I'll actually approve the build, and that will then push it out to the Zubhium cloud service. Again, just very simple, drop that into the Jenkins build. So I make sure that we're picking up the correct artifacts, so that the artifacts are definitely the ones that were approved by me in the QA build. There's the APK file, and then we push that up to Zubhium, and it can then be pushed out to the users. So lots more options around that, but KD will talk about that in much more detail, I think. So let's come out of the presentation now. I can put that down, and let's go to just have a look at what we have. So you can see here that I just pushed up my build, and in fact this was one where I put in a little bug deliberately, and that triggered a downstream build where I tested it using all these different platform types. So what I now want to do is I'm just going to go in, I'm the QA person, and I'm actually going to go and approve that build. There we go. I'll approve it. It will now go to this gold status. It gets the promotion of the QA approval. And if I go down here, you'll see this is automatically kicking off a build process which will execute this job here, the CuckooChess Android release. And if I come down here, you'll see this is where I have my link to Zubhium. So if I just come down to the bottom, you'll see here, we copy the artifacts from the approval process and push the build up into the. I actually put in a little bug that causes that application to crash. Okay, so that's the sort of setup for the demo. KD, can I turn this over to you to explain a little bit about the Zubhium service and then to show how this works?
Sure, absolutely, Mark.
Let me assign, I'll make you the presenter right now. There we go.
Thanks, Mark. Let me share my screen. Okay, awesome. So thanks, Mark, for explaining the whole process. As Mark said, Android ecosystem is quite fragmented. So let's just quickly go over what are the different problems and how can you make sure that it works across all different fragments. Usually people say Android beta distribution is extremely simple. Yes, that's right. But it's very, very simple, but it's completely inefficient. Why? Now let's say this is a Mark. He built his CuckooChess application. He usually attach those to the new build to the email and send it to different blogs, users, or forums. First step is invite and involve users. Second, most of the users are non-technical, so you have to help them with the installation. Then follow up with them asking what's their feedback, because you want to know what exactly they are thinking about your application. Then you need to understand what are the crashes those users are experiencing and get more about their feedback after a specific interval. And repeat this process again and again. Usually, although you will use emulators as well as devices, getting real users' feedback is really, really important. So let's make it right. How? It's just a 3-step process with Zubhium. Now we already built the application. Mark already using Junkin plugin. He uploaded it to the Zubhium platform. Now let's say I'm gonna play the role of Mark's QA team, and I will involve all the users, real users, in the testing of this CuckooChess application. So let's switch back to our dashboard and let's quickly see how's Mark build is doing. So Mark just uploaded CuckooChess version number 66 and 1.05 version. So what I did so far, I had created a group of everyone, including you guys, in the webinar, and I want to make sure that this build is distributed to you guys, so that you guys can help us in understanding the problems. So it's very simple. Distribution is very simple with Zubhium. So I'm gonna select the build. So Mark already integrated Zubhium SDK. So I'll just go here and say invite users. Now there are you can write totally custom invitation email, and each user will get exclusive link to download the application with release notes whoever he have Mark specified. Now I'll just select the webinar group and we'll say send invite. So what platform will does in meantime, it creates a unique exclusive link to all the users and invite them via email. Now on the platform side, you can track who is downloading, where exactly user is downloading, essentially keep a track of all user activities. Now always there is a problem. We usually send beta builds to users, and we have to find out, hey, what's your feedback? We have to keep poking users as a developer after 3-4 days. With Zubhium, you don't need to do that. On the platform side, you can just set a reminder, let's say 48 hours, and everyone who is downloading the application will get an email asking for the feedback, their feedback on the application, and they will be given a very simple, mobile-friendly feedback form wherever they can put their thoughts or whatever they want to share about your application. So I'll just keep it so that skip it for now. Let's go. And now, as a developer, my job is very simple. I can just go here and click and check the status for all the people whom I involved, and as soon as they will start downloading, you will see this incrementing the count. So for now, I have already, so until you guys install it, I'll just go and show you the sample application. So we have a sample application which we already, it's a Jetboy game. So let's say I have invited close to 100 users, out of which 30 to 40 users have already downloaded the application. Now I can track the exceptions occurring on their phone. So I now know, okay, there is something we have called as application health. So at any given point of time, rather than wondering how your application is doing, platform tells you in real time how's the health of your application. Is it good, bad, or what is the criticality of any problem? So let's say there is a crash, there is an exception which is crashing close to 150 to users, and let's go and check it out what exactly it's creating, why it, and which form factors it is having problems. So looks like it is crashing in the range of 2.3.4 to 2.3.7. So looks like there is something or some backward compatibility things we are missing on. So let's check it out with the network operator. Oh, so it's now I know that on 2.3 probably it's occurring on Verizon phone, Verizon network, and by the way it's on a Droid X. Oh, so now as a developer I know at a pinpoint level that this particular problem is occurring on Verizon phone Droid X with a Android OS version something from 2.3.3. Similarly, you can click on any particular crash and go and check out the details of what exactly is stack trace, then what was the network state at that given point of time. Similarly, you can check log cats if you have read logs permission, of course. Um, the other interesting fact Zubhium offers is you can either enable in-app support desk in your application with one line of integration, and allow your users to communicate back to you with their feedbacks. The biggest advantage of that is users no longer complain and say this application sucks and gives you bad rating. Essentially, they will just come back and express their thoughts via this in-app support desk. Now, someone like Lehman is saying unable to turn on the app. So looks like now you know that rather than your support going and back, usually what happens, let's say user is facing problem, most of the time he just uninstalls, or other way he just sends an email saying I am facing this X problem. Now your support team goes and asks that user which phone he is having. Then if that user knows the details of the system, he comes back, and it's a like never-ending loop. So with in-app support desk, developers can enable in their application, and user will just say send these details. Now you know that the user is facing problem on HTC phone with again Verizon stuff. So it looks like there is a common problem, and again SDK is 2.3.4. So now your development team knows what exactly the problem at a very granular level. So this is about feedback and exceptions, which entirely works in the beta distribution as well as your application lifecycle. So there are a lot of gaming companies who actually wonder, who usually face problems with piracy and all other stuff. So we have something called as a kill switch. So with which, let's say I pushed JetBoy um, 20 version 20, and I will just say go and close this build. Now when I can send an update message to all the users using this application, if I want to close this beta build. Now I have ability to redirect user after the beta to either Android market or Amazon market. Or similarly, if you have a paid application, you can force these users to update. You can make sure that this user is literally going to the next version. So you are ultimately with the kill switch controlling the unwanted distribution of your application. So let's get back to our original application, where it looks like already 10 of you downloaded application. Now let's look at the crash you guys are experiencing. So looks like everyone who have downloaded probably faced this crash. And let's go and check it out, what exactly the problem. So all the users who are using this application are on 4.02. They are experiencing crash at looks like an option selected in CuckooChess slide number 233. Then probably network operator, probably someone Vodafone, Orange. Then the SDK they are using HTC Sensation GT. Now again I can go back at lower level and check it out at the granular level, what exactly the problem is happening. So Zubhium is not just for betas, not just for production. It's entire life cycle. So some of the things developers come back and talk to us is usually how can we build quality apps. So as Mark demonstrated, is the whole theme of this conversation is develop, test, and deploy. Because considering, let's say, Android ecosystem is pretty fragmented, and getting good feedback or building, you have only one chance to push your application in the market. And as a user, your users will have close to 10 seconds to make your make impression on them. So you want to make sure that everything is really good, performing really well. So our approach with this stuff is build more often. So I'll just skip this. So don't be afraid, test it. Let's make apps stable. So one thing Mark was sharing, like, don't just build, push it to market, share release notes with the user, like involve real people in your testing. Don't be afraid. Don't spam them, they love your app. So usually your users are really helpful. They if you ask them, or the people who are complaining saying this application doesn't work, or this application is giving, or this particular feature is giving you problem, ask them what exactly the problem and involve these users in your next build, so that these users will feel again happy that you fix particular problem. And as a responsive developer, they will stick to your application, and over the period of time you will find really expert users who are who knows your application and who are ready to give you the feedback. Do it again and again. So we feel that something like with the build, deploy, and test like methodology, it's always useful for developers to build application at pre-production as well as after the post-production. So with the CloudBees is already offering really rich offering with, you can test your application, build it almost like weekly, daily, or at any with the different processes, as well as with different emulator setups. And with our partnership, you can involve real users. You can involve real users to participate in your beta, and those users could be anyone. Similarly, let's say usually people ask, oh, we don't have users. So with Zubhium, you can share. We create a very simple public page for you guys so that you can involve or recruit users on the fly to participate in your application. So Zubhium is a platform for your entire life cycle to make your application better. We stick, I mean, this and integration is fairly simple, as Mark mentioned, and I think looks like a lot of people are downloading. You can track pretty much every detail at really at a granular level and find it out what exactly happening at the application level. I think I pretty much covered it. Let me pass control to Mark to add some of the things.
So while we're waiting for Katie to transfer over to Mark, if you have any questions, please feel free to input your questions into the Q&A section of the WebEx.
While we're waiting, thanks very much, Katie. That was fantastic. And I'm so glad people are trying that out. If you're happy to be subscribed, I'll push up a new build later with a better version of the CuckooChess without the bug.
Yeah.
Just so, can I just show you how you would, if you want to trial this out yourself. So I want to just show you, it's really easy, for example, to set up a CloudBees account. So just go to cloudbees.com. And if you go to the sign up page there, again, as a developer, it's entirely free. We don't ask for credit cards or anything like that. You use shared resources in the cloud. Just put in your email, company name if you want, your first and last name, just so we know how to address you, and put in a password. Because you're doing these builds in the cloud and you're actually deploying applications live in the cloud, we need to know what domain name to use. You saw when I do things here, we have this partnerdemo.ci.cloudbees.com. That partner demo is an example of a domain name. So pick one that is, your own memorable name, and this would be for the source code repositories. This would be the domain where the apps are deployed. Typically, people have those the same thing. You get a very simple arithmetic test, click Create Account, and you're good to go. You'll be taken through to the home page here. Sorry, let me just log on. And then once I'm into CloudBees, this is where you have access to the source code repositories. This is where your applications will be deployed. This is where you can run databases, MySQL databases, and so on. And these are the sort of Jenkins build jobs, including the ones we were just looking at there. But the easiest way to get started, if you're new to the PaaS platform, is simply to come in, go to ClickStart, and this is where you'll see all these different sort of projects in a box. So there are the two that I mentioned, the token vending machine. But again, if you want just to, set up an application really quickly, let's say you want to get into Play or Scala or something like that, or you want to, try out something new, just click on one of those buttons. For example, I can just click on this one, and it'll take me through to a screen like this, and I can put in something like, my Play project, and I click the button, and it'll go away, and it'll create all the pieces for you. And after, 30 seconds to a minute or whatever, you'll actually have that application up and running. You'll have the source code in a repository that you can just clone, a Git repository you can clone locally, and you're up and running. So if you want to try those out, please sign up, have a look. do go, if you want to try any of these mobile build scenarios, just go to partnerdemo.ci.cloudbees.com. That'll show you exactly how you need to set it up. And again, just look at the CuckooChess example. And don't worry if you don't want to set up all the pipelines. Just look at the Android release. If you just did a simple build, all you have to do is right down at the bottom, post-build actions, just add a post-build action, and one of the things in there will include upload to Zubhium. So you can just sign up for the, let me just close the dialog, that application is all now up and running. You can then just sign up for an account with Zubhium. You can then link that account, you can log on, add an application. It's very simple, it's just a few steps, and it'll give you a secret key for that app, which you can pop in there. And then in your Jenkins build, you simply point to the bin directory of your Android project where the app is built, point it to the APK, and then basically you're good to go. There are a whole series of additional things you can do if you want to control which user groups it goes to and so on. Again, that's all discussed in the documentation that's online at the Zubhium site. So it's extremely easy to do, and just remember to follow those simple instructions to integrate the Zubhium SDK into your project. Just to recap on those, all it really involves is you have to make sure in your libs directory you have the Zubhium SDK.jar. Again, you download that from the Zubhium site when you log on, and then in your Android manifest, you need to have the internet permission, and it's going to give you better, richer information if you enable the access network state as well. Then in the main activity for your project, just come in here, you'll have an import statement up at the top, and then you simply initialize the Zubhium SDK. So what you do is you have the import statement there, and then you just have those lines there where you just add in basically your Zubhium app key, and then in your onCreate method, you just initialize the Zubhium SDK, exactly as laid down in the slide. And you can see down here, actually in my logcat window, when I was running the application locally, you can see that it's initialized and configured, and you can see there we're picking up the divide by 0, the deliberate error that we introduced when you click the undo button. Okay, Alyssa, I think we've got a few minutes just to deal with any questions.
Yes, so there were some questions that came in. Question came in from Kirk. The question is, what about iOS apps? This makes total sense for Android.
Yes, so just to explain, from you can do iOS builds with CloudBees. Essentially what we do is you can connect up a macOS slave environment. That could be your laptop if you're just developing. I have a blog that shows you how to do it. It's very easy. Or you can use a hosted Mac in the cloud service, something like xCloud. Again, we've written up how to do all this, and I'll do a blog very shortly about how to do that with something like xCloud. So check back to blog.cloudbees.com, or just ping me, mpritchard@cloudbees.com, and I'd be very happy to talk much more about that. And we do have examples, hook up the Macs here. So if you just look under the mobile folder, you'll see, for example, builds where you have how to do builds with both Android using a slave, and here are the iOS builds where I'm building, the first is building an app, the second one is building an IPA archive. So just go to partnerdemo.ci.cloudbees.com. You can do that without having to sign up or anything. Just go into the mobile folder, take a look at this, and you'll see a fairly detailed explanation of what you have to do. and you'll also go in and see the configuration. It uses the Jenkins Xcode plugin.
Yep. And just to add Mark stuff, I mean, right now Zubhium supports Android, but iOS support, iOS as well as Windows support is shortly coming. So we may be doing one more webinar to demonstrate probably for iOS application.
Yeah, we certainly will. That'll be great. I'm looking forward to it myself.
Yep.
So the next question from Jay: in order to do a build in Xcode, is it required to use a locally hosted slave?
You can use a locally hosted slave. You could use a slave that's hosted in the cloud. So that's the example. And in fact, Sasha Labouré, our founder, was doing that. We were talking about it just before we came onto the webinar, and he's been doing that very successfully using the service from xCloud. And so in that case, everything is happening in the cloud. Again, I'm going to do a write-up, a blog, just to explain exactly how to do that and take you through all the setup steps.
Thanks, Mark. The next question is for KD, and it's from Pramnas. Is Zubhium service free, or does it come with a cost?
Sure. So we do have free plans as well as paid plans. It's a monthly subscription basis, depending on at what stage of your you want to use Zubhium. You can use Zubhium free plans for just beta, or you can use for entire life cycle, which is for distributing betas before your application release. Then use crash reporting in-app support desk once your application is released in the App Store or market. And the pricing is very simple, depending on number of downloads you are getting as well as number of crashes you are hitting. The prices do vary, but those we ultimately believe that your success gonna be Zubhium's success. So and feel free to contact us if you have any other suggestions in those regards. And we are fairly small team with dedicated just like focused app developers from popular companies coming together and build this platform to solve their own problems and made it available to all others who are in a similar shoes.
Okay, so it looks like that's all the questions that we have for today. So thank you, Mark and KD, for your time. We did record the presentation today, and later on today I will send out the link to the recording as well as the slides as soon as the link becomes available.
And just, Alyssa, just in case anyone, we presented an awful lot of material. Just in case anyone was confused on anything, I will do a sort of detailed blog going through the various points that we discussed, and we'll send out a link to that.
Awesome. So, Mark, we had another question that just came in from Cameron. How do you deal with signing of release apps on your service?
So basically, we would do this through the, if you want to sign this, in a short term, the easiest way to do that is to actually do the signing process using a local slave environment where you have the appropriate keys. And I mean, if we're talking about Android or keychains and so on, if we're talking about iOS. So, for example, this is something that comes up where you have iOS builds and you need to sign it with an appropriate provisioning profile. That's something where the easiest thing to do is to simply have the appropriate slave environment set up, which will have the appropriate provisioning profiles and so on installed. And then you can execute that build, which might be the final build in a sort of process. That one can be executed there, which is your dedicated signing machine.
Great, thanks, Mark. All right, so I think that's it. Thank you very much for joining us today, and hope everybody have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks,
everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.